When Sonic enters the Backrooms, he encounters another entity. He goes through various challenges and trials, panicking, but receives some very unexpected help. And when he faces the ghost of his own friend, he ends up becoming something that many don't expect, a bizarre version of himself. Sonic in the Backrooms is one of the most unusual stories I've enjoyed following over all these years of making Sonic content online. Created here by Swagness, this has become one of the best Sonic comics made by fans, but it takes the Sonic universe and mashes it together with the Backrooms universe. And it has been updated, although now it's much slower because the story has gotten more serious. And I want to bring you up to date on the whole story, but since I can't talk about what happened next without leaving you lost if you happen to come here for the first time, I recommend that you watch my previous video, since there I talk about everything that's in the story in the first season, the second part, and now the latest developments, which are still part of the second season. Dark Sonic's episode is really interesting. If you haven't seen it, stay on this video. No worries. If you watched the previous part, skip to the on-screen timestamp. It's really good. The comic starts with Sonic simply trying to find a way out of a very strange place, known here as the Backrooms. A place famous for having several yellowish corridors with floors that look more worn out. And it basically has endless paths. It's like a huge maze that never leads anywhere. These corridors here are basically uncomfortable and went viral on the internet because of a short viral story. These corridors here seem to never lead anywhere. And it even seems like small creatures might be living there, but in a very suspicious way. The place is completely uncomfortable and there is never a clear way out. This place is a paradox of time and space, so much so that you can't tell which direction or era you'll be in, since things and objects from the past, present, and even the future can appear at the same time, because time there doesn't work the way we know it. Objects appear here, being remembered and forgotten all the time. For example, they might seem familiar or they might feel more unsettling. The Backrooms are basically an environment with endless corridors and rooms, yellow wallpaper, strange carpet, and a buzzing sound that comes from all these lamps scattered throughout this place. How Sonic ended up there is still a mystery, but the story begins at this point in the story. He's trapped there, but he doesn't realize that behind him, a somewhat unfamiliar but taller creature was watching him and following him. It looks like Sonic, but its appearance is a bit strange. Turning around and facing this creature, he becomes completely terrified and breaks out in a cold sweat, staring at that giant creature as if he were nothing, tiny compared to its great stature. Here, he has a slightly creepy doubled smile, as if it were a mirror distortion. Two little Russians, several different irises, two pairs of ears, and he stares without any kind of fear, as if he were, saying hello, hello, as if he were friendlier. Even so, Sonic doesn't look at him in a friendly way. He's terrified by the situation and does the only thing he can do: run. Desperate, he shouts that there's no way someone like him can catch up. He needs to shake him off, but the other hedgehog is there, chasing him at the same speed. He runs at full speed but ends up falling into a hole, where his spin dash lets him go down a few more levels. And from there, he keeps moving forward, putting a lot of distance between them. Landing in a superhero pose, he thinks everything is fine. He looks around but notices something terrible, something scarier than the other Sonic: the pool level. The Backrooms are huge, but the further you go, you end up finding different levels. The pool level is here. There are several corridors, but the difference is that they have like a pool architecture. Those pools that keep stretching and stretching and you can't tell where they end. Sonic faces that and thinks it's a joke, but when he looks, the other hedgehog ends up getting really close. Not only that, but he copies the same pose, as if they were the same thing, and he understands exactly how Sonic is going to act. So, Sonic tries to calm the situation and talks to him. He proposes one thing: a race. If he wins, Sonic will stay with him, trapped. But if he wins, he leaves. And the creature seems to be calmer. He actually responds well to Sonic, not to mention that he also listens to him. Unlike other entities that Sonic has faced over all these years, the being here ends up showing a big smile and keeps agreeing with him without saying a single word. After all, he is the hedgehog and he is also Sonic. That way, he also wants to join a race. And facing it with fear, he says not to hold back. Getting ready and starting off, the two begin to run. They go really fast over the water and also grab some grids here to be able to slide. Sonic runs at his ultra speed, which allows him to float over the water, but he also grabs some buoys to use as a boost. The big thing here is that Sonic is literally facing another version of himself, but he's a duplicate and a bit taller. Those longer legs would be able to beat him in terms of speed. As Sonic runs, he feels very uncomfortable and even wonders if that place is endless and has no end. So he changes the bet. He says that whoever finds the exit wins, and the other hedgehog ends up agreeing. What's even scarier is that he only responds with gestures and never speaks. Sonic keeps running and finds some very familiar signs, showing that that place, the break room, has connected with his world several times. And he wonders why that place keeps getting bigger the more he runs. But for some reason, Sonic started to get really tired, and that doesn't make sense to him since he's never gotten tired from running so much. But his determination makes him want to keep going, and he keeps going. He says he hasn't felt this bad since the time he was infected by a virus, and that this place needs to have a way out. It has to end. Leaving the water zone, he ends up entering another large room. He stops for a second and stares at what's in front of him, but he can't believe that it's real. There's practically a huge sea of water in front of him. But he's not afraid. He wants to keep going because he needs to find a way out, and he doesn't want to be trapped in this place anymore. He stretches and gets ready to leave. Energizing himself, he runs at his top speed, creating a huge wave wherever he goes. His speed is so high, so incredibly high, that he ends up breaking the sound barrier. He starts to notice various details ahead that suggest there could be a wall, or maybe even an exit. He keeps running, passing by each of those pillars and corridors. He's moving at his incredibly fast speed, going way beyond what he usually does in aquatic places. Mentally re-energizing himself, he moves forward where he finds a large wall and what seems to be an exit. But when he gets really close to that end, he ends up finding that other hedgehog, realizing that he managed to win and that he's going to keep Sonic trapped in this place. So tired, Sonic gives up, falling into the water and drowning. With Sonic already unconscious and nearly drowned, the other hedgehog falls into the water, preventing Sonic from falling into the darkness, since it seems like this pool has no bottom. There, this other hedgehog ends up grabbing Sonic and pulling him by his arm. And unlike the original hedgehog, he can swim and ends up pulling Sonic back out of the pool. He gets a little sad about the situation and Sonic is still unconscious. So he ends up taking Sonic to the big exit, which leads them to the 37th floor. And they keep running. Unlike other Sonic adaptations in other universes, this one is the craziest because it picks up some details from the Backrooms, which went viral years ago, and even got a movie adaptation that caught the attention of a whole new crowd. Sonic, by himself, should be able to escape from anywhere in the Backrooms, since he has dealt with alternate dimensions and has faced much more powerful creatures. A classic example here is Infinity, who ends up creating his own dimension and throws several challenges that go beyond Sonic's abilities. Or when he entered cyberspace to, complete missions inside Sonic Frontiers. These environments were much more familiar to Sonic, so he was able to have some control over everything there. The big issue is that Backrooms put him in a place completely surrounded by pools, water, which makes him totally scared. The panic of dealing with this other version of Sonic, which in a way seemed to want to save him, made him lose some of his energy and go into survival mode. It's the kind of situation that puts Sonic face to face with himself, but he started to get completely tired and terrified because he wasn't sure what was coming. Look, to be honest, it's a much more nerfed version of Sonic, but the person who's creating this comic really liked the feedback it got and has already started working on new adaptations and sequels because it looks like this series has a future. In fact, on the day I'm recording this video, some new things have already come out. Sonic is saved and taken to a kind of pink house, the cat house, where he stays asleep. The entity basically put Sonic to sleep and was happy with that situation. But while Sonic rests, the entity also falls asleep, waiting for the hedgehog to wake up. Outside, near Grand Hill, Tails is worried because Sonic is untraceable. In other words, he has no idea where the hedgehog is, and Amy is also worried. This situation is so alarming that many other characters ended up showing up here. Knuckles is worried, thinking that Sonic is in danger, and even Silver shows up here saying that if Sonic can't be tracked here, it seems like he was taken to another reality. But surprisingly, the one who ends up showing up here is Dr. Eggman, saying that he has a clue about where Sonic might have gone, and that they should follow him to understand what's going on. And this kind of information is so surprising that even Knuckles can't understand the situation. There's a certain tension in the air here. Both Knuckles and Shadow became much more apprehensive, and Tails is more aggressive, trying to understand why on earth Dr. Eggman would want to help. Eggman makes it very clear that he wants to destroy Sonic and keep him far away, but it's better to have Sonic nearby than for him to just disappear out of nowhere. And that Tails should be grateful, because he's going to help speed up the search for Sonic. Amy tries to calm Tails down, since Eggman has helped Sonic in other situations in the past, and Tails ends up agreeing and becoming a little calmer. After a few minutes of walking, Dr. Eggman says that, as he knows, he found a strange anomaly inside this mark shaped like a door on one of the walls of Grand Hill. It seems that Sonic was taken to this place, and his last vital sign was seen outside this door. Tails also finds it strange and believes that kind of portal must have drawn Sonic inside. That way they would have to get ready in order to go through that door. And on top of that, Eggman even adds that after someone goes through that portal, no other vital sign is seen, as if it was some kind of wormhole, where whoever enters is practically taken to another moment in another dimension. He goes on to say that if everyone is going after Sonic, they all need to get ready, because that place is an endless maze of yellow walls. And he warns that it's an endless maze of yellow walls and musty carpets. Shadow takes the lead here and says we don't have time to waste and that everyone should get ready to go after that other hedgehog. And of course, Rouge even jokes about the situation, pointing out how, wow, Shadow is really worried about the hedgehog, and he immediately cuts her off, telling her to be quiet. Well, after a few days, Sonic finally wakes up in that pink bed. He feels a little better after sleeping, but he gets startled by that entity just staring at him without any movement or reaction. He's there, kind of nervous to find out that he's trapped together with the other creature. And she's really happy, showing a smile and joy because he woke up. But Sonic also shows that he has another problem. He hasn't eaten for several days and needs to eat. So, the entity ends up getting up and going to get something for the hedgehog. He makes some signs and gestures here, trying to make Sonic understand that they're going to have dinner. And he starts to smell something nice. In other words, a giant plate of chili dogs. Sonic's favorite food. He gets happy and thanks because the entity ended up cooking all of this for him. He eats the chili dogs and loves it because for him it's the best food of all. It's like the saying goes, hunger is the best sauce. Then, the entity opens its big mouth to eat, showing that it has lots and lots of teeth, even resembling Shin Sonic's mouth, which scares the real Sonic. But the other one, the entity, ends up loving the chili dogs too. And Sonic concludes that it's actually only good because in the end, he himself is the hedgehog after all. They spend a week here inside that pink house full of kitties, and Sonic ends up getting a stylish outfit, a jacket here that looks like a high school uniform. And after meeting this strange being who pronounces the numbers 0623, both Sonic and the entity leave, thanking them for the stay, and of course they give him a little Sonic plushie. So the two head off into the unknown. Outside, Sonic struggles with a bright light shining in his face, and he arrives in a place full of hills, slopes, and a straight path. But Sonic starts to have a strange feeling, as if something bad is about to happen. But they have no other choice but to keep moving forward. So, they quickly speed up, and after running for a long time, something catches the hedgehog's attention. He stops and stares at the biggest hill of all, with a large castle on top. A very unique house, among all the others around the vast scenery of the backgrounds. Staring at that makes Sonic start to feel bad, a very strong headache hits him, and the entity even notices that he's not well. Then Sonic starts to have a kind of panic attack. He starts to breathe heavily, as if he were losing his sanity and his mind was collapsing. He goes into complete despair, wanting to feel normal, but he can't. Then, the entity quickly picks Sonic up in its arms and starts taking him away. It takes him inside one of those houses, completely distancing him from his final goal, and starts rummaging through a strange refrigerator. Inside, Sonic ends up resting, wondering what's happening to him since he doesn't feel like this. He's not like this. Then, the entity grabs a bottle for him, which is a kind of almond water. He says that's not ideal for the situation, but it might help. So, he starts drinking it, while the entity kind of unwraps some more food for him. After drinking, Sonic realizes he feels a little better and thanks him. The entity becomes a little calmer because of that, but he ends up handing over the package of food he had with him, and he warns that at night they shouldn't go outside because it's dangerous. So Sonic agrees, saying that's all for today. And he asks exactly what that water is, because for some reason, it was making him better and healing him. The entity explains that the more he drinks milk, almond water, and things like that, the better his mind gets. And if he eats, and at the same time also drinks, he becomes much more aware and sane. It's a way not to go crazy inside this universe. And he explains that if you don't stop to eat, feed yourself, and drink, you'll start to lose your sanity. Implying that something terrible would happen to Sonic if he kept running outside without stopping. Relaxing, Sonic even tells the entity that it reminds him of another creature, a friend, a partner, who also helped him in several situations, Tails himself. This makes the entity very happy, but he doesn't know who Tails is, implying that this entity, just like Sonic, only exists there with limited information and also with memories of its own body. This explains why he knew how to swim and was able to save the hedgehog. Even so, Sonic still feels a bit bad about the situation, wondering where the others are and how he's going to escape from there. If the others are looking for Sonic inside that world, and of course, what might be inside that castle when he finally goes there the next day. That's because outside the house where they are, giant creatures start walking around, waiting for their next victim. The next day, day breaks. The entity started carrying a large amount of almond water in the backpack, and the two set off for the castle that is on the highest hill of all. When Sonic gets to that door, he starts to feel a little uneasy about the situation again, as if something bad is about to happen. But he needs to move forward, because that's the goal. Using his homing attack here, he heads into the castle, where that castle has a very different look, even completely changing the art style. That actually reminds me of that animation from Sonic Colossus Ultimate. If you think yes or no, comment here, okay? But anyway, the entity is confused. However, Sonic is a bit more tired than he'd like. Sonic doesn't exactly like the setting he's in. That castle isn't exactly what he imagined, but he has to move forward in this place, even if it's a bit weird. Again, he starts to feel really bad inside that castle, but he speeds up so he can get through this place quickly. After running through several corridors, Sonic faces something common here: robots. Strange robots that look like toys from the 60s. These robots here are guards, and they start shooting at Sonic. They try to launch explosive shots. They explode around him, but always end up missing. Both Sonic and the entity manage to dodge very skillfully, but Sonic starts to counterattack. You can notice that the entity also starts attacking the robots after Sonic lands his first blow, and with that, they end up clearing a big path here. But while Sonic is moving forward, heading to the end of the big castle, Sonic's group is getting ready to invade the Backrooms. Tails and his crew join forces using both Tails and Robotnik's technology to find a way to get inside the Backrooms. You can see that Tails is now here with equipment to avoid any kind of radiation or infection from getting into his body. The two of them built a large portal on top of that symbol, but they end up realizing that inside the Backrooms the air isn't as toxic as they might have imagined. Some prefer to wear masks, others don't. Robotnik and Tails have the idea to split up. Since the place is so huge, they could find Sonic much faster by exploring different places. The two of them put various technologies in their clothes and suits to make sure everyone could keep track of their location. So here we have Eggman's team, formed by Rouge, Silver, Shadow, and Robotnik himself, with his walker, the Eggwalk. Meanwhile, we have the team with Tails, Amy, and Knuckles searching that place. While Sonic was moving forward inside the big castle, he comes across what appears to be the king, the owner of the castle, who didn't like the hedgehog's attitude, who was, let's say, very insubordinate. Since Sonic was a difficult character, and the king's challenge was basically to make his worst nightmares come true, he practically became a new entity. A bizarre being, a copy of Tails that scares not only Sonic, but who asks why Sonic ended up abandoning them. That wraps up part 2, and my friend, it's really good. Sonic's gang pretty much ended up isolated on different paths, but nobody knows exactly where each of them is. They're on a mission to find Sonic, but we don't know how each one survived. But as Sonic goes deeper into the castle, he faces several challenges until he finds the Great King. The entity doesn't have a clearly defined body, but when he faces that creature, it starts to transform. And it uses some of the hedgehog's own memories, precisely to transform into his old friend, and questions why he abandoned them throughout this whole story. It's because the leader of the castle is an entity that practically manipulates the mind of each member who ends up entering that Backrooms universe. At least that's what it seems like here. Why do you think Sonic has another entity that ends up helping him? No matter how bizarre it might be, it's still literally Sonic. A lot of people didn't understand this part. But even though he's really bizarre and scary, he's still the Sonic we know. That explains why he really liked the idea of running, taking part in races, and at the same time managed to save Sonic. But he had the ability to swim, which is really strange. It's because even though he's that being we understand as a hedgehog, he's not exactly Sonic himself. He's an entity that replicates him, but with some extra abilities, and the prior knowledge of what happens inside the Backrooms itself. Even though it's a completely strange and disconnected place, a lot of people get confused by it, but this man goes way beyond the writer's ability, who's creating stories based on this concept. So when the king of the castle appears in front of Sonic just to challenge him, he ends up taking on the image of Tails himself, which, by the way, is already a reference, since the setting really resembles Tails' doll. Hi, I'm your little friend. Sonic's brave pose simply disappears because Tails shows up here with his eyes closed, or even without eyes, and Sonic questions himself. He just responds, saying that he never abandoned anyone. He never wanted to do that. Then that Tails quickly ends up transforming into Knuckles, holding Sonic by his neck, shouting at Sonic that you disappeared for many weeks. Because of that, shouting that he's nothing to his friend, that he was a coward and disappeared. Sonic is in shock, saying what the hell is happening to him. This isn't real. They're not Knuckles or Tails. Then Knuckles himself throws a super punch right in Sonic's stomach, leaving him stunned. This blow is almost fatal, making him spit out ketchup. And then he hits him with a little hammer, smashing Sonic's face into the ground, showing that Knuckles is here and ready to put an end to this. Sonic is completely in shock because that kind of situation wasn't supposed to happen. He's using the image of Sonic's own friends to make him uncomfortable with the situation. And he's trapped in his own thoughts, hitting the ground, with his heart almost racing in a really bizarre way. He tells himself that he's better than this. He's trying to control you, but you can't let him. This king is a coward because he can't use Sonic as his puppet. So when the king tells him to give up everything, Sonic slowly stands up and starts laughing, saying that the king himself asked for everything that's happening. And what's coming next? You used my friends against me. You tried to use that, and you thought it would be cool. You thought you could control me and steal my freedom. And you think you can do all that and get away with it? Pony, you're not a king. You're not God. And with a strong aura around him, Sonic channels his energy and makes it very clear. The king has no power over him. Let me out now, before I kill you. See. And before Sonic released a wave of purple energy from his hands, the king says that Sonic managed to pass the king's challenge, and now he can cross the castle. Congratulations, Sonic, or something like that. The entity stays quiet, but Sonic returns to normal, responding, "Thank goodness. Let's get out of here." Entering another portal here. Recognizing the place, which is completely different from where they entered, the floor is a bit more reddish, but there's something that catches their attention. Sonic is more confused, and the entity is a little surprised. That's the end of the story for now. So yeah, the story went up to this part, where we have the second season, and it will keep going further and further, because Backrooms are stories that go way beyond what we imagine. Because even though it's just a concept, it even made it to the movies. Each story made based on the Backrooms has a different ending. Sometimes when it even has an ending, right? Remembering that the creator, Agnes herself, she ended up saying that she's working even more on these comics, and she said that from this point on, everything would get much creepier. So much so that Dark Sonic showed up here. The change in art style was also very noticeable to everyone. Just like she's also working in a much more cohesive way on this comic, because she wants to deliver the ending to us soon. But she said she's slowing down the pace a little. Because you know, the pressure on creators is really high. People started to get annoying. She didn't complain. But I can tell that something bad is about to happen if she keeps delivering comics super fast day after day. Let her mind work. She'll deliver a really good story for us. And my friend, this story is great, so leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Join my WhatsApp group too, because if this story continues, I'll definitely cover it here on the channel when the next part comes out. You can expect videos about this on this channel. Thank you very much. Thanks, I'm out. See you in the next video.